Hi, well, it's Sunday, the 12th of November 2023. It's about 4 p.m. UK time, and I've got a poser for you. I've got a question. I don't expect anyone to come up with an answer, but I want you to think about something. I'm on the South Cornish coast at the moment. I'll be coming home back to where my base is in 48 hours or 24 hours or so. And yeah, it's pretty blustery and windy and horizontal rain and all that you expect on the South Cornish coast at this time of year. It's not cold. But there's been a couple of nights which have been crystal clear, much clearer than in most other parts of Britain because there is zero light pollution down here. And I've been looking at Jupiter and Saturn and Venus early in the morning, and particularly the constellation of Orion and Orion's belt, and the sword of Orion coming down off of Mintaka, the centre of Orion's belt. And with a good pair of binoculars, you can see in the bottom two stars of the Sword of Orion, you can see the faint blur of the Orion Nebula, which I've never seen before with my naked eye. So that's a testament to how clear the weather is down here. But anyway, I digress. I've always been interested in ancient culture because I've always wanted to trace when did humanity first start recognising that the position of the planets and the stars in the sky have a resonance with human behavioural patterns, i.e. when did astrology start? And so I've done my fair share of research, more than my fair share. I know quite a bit about this. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know what I'm talking about most of the time. I know that around 1 million years ago, a hominid got off its knees and knuckles and stood up straight for the first time, somewhere in the Kenyan plains bordering with Ethiopia. And I know that at that time, that hominid would have then looked up at the sky at night and over a period of a few weeks or months would have seen that there's lights moving in the sky slowly against the backdrop of the stars, the movement of the planets. And they wouldn't have known what they were looking at. They had no concept of language or rationality. But that would have been the start of legends, myths, stories. Now, over the next nearly 1 billion years, 900 million years, this proto-human developed. And somewhere around 80 to 100,000 years ago, we see Neanderthalis. And Neanderthal man was around a long time. We know Neanderthalis was basically lunar orientated, not solar, and that most of the time Neanderthalis was working during the dark hours, not the light, probably because of falling foul of predators. Bearing in mind, this is before the last ice age. We also know that Neanderthal man was only about 4 to 4.5 feet high, 1.5 meters high, with a very short, squat body, a very big head, and a very large brain that had one lobe. This is knowledge. We know this to be true. We also know that somewhere between 50,000 BC to 30,000 BC, Neanderthal disappeared to be replaced by Homo sapiens, a foot taller, thinner frame, thinner skeleton, and with a bilobal brain, 2 lobes of the brain. Now this doesn't happen in nature, not in that short space of time. Within a maximum of 20,000 years, the brain split into 2 lobes. So, within 800 generations, the human body grew a foot, became a lot thinner, and the brain split into 2, became bilobal. Now that shouldn't happen according to most systems of organised biological evolution as we understand them. But it did. And from 30,000 BC onwards, Homo sapiens was gradually running this planet. Obviously, there were still ice ages around. There was hunters and gatherers. Now, up until recently, modern historians would have it that up until 5000 BC, we were running around in loincloths and grunting with each other. But around 4800 BC, we see the first civilization that's up until recently has been recognised by historians as arriving in Sumeria. And they had their own alphabet, they had tax inspectors. We haven't been able to translate the alphabet. They also had a knowledge of the stars because there are ancient copper scrolls in the Rijksmuseum in Germany and in the British Museum of the priests crowning the king and pointing to the plough and the Pleiades overhead at the time of the coronation. So obviously inferring that the position of the stars and the planets at the time would have been influential in choosing the time of the coronation. A lesson there for today, perhaps. More recently, the developments around Göbekli Tepe in Turkey have revolutionised these ideas because Göbekli Tepe, we've been able to carbon date stuff found there back to 9500 BC, 5,000 years before Sumeria. But what's interesting is in Göbekli Tepe, it's a mouthful, is that there's no human or animal remains found there. It's just ceremonial. So this was obviously a temple, which was then buried under earth around 8,500 BC. Most of the temple buildings in Göbekli Tepe were facing southeast, which points to the sunrise point during the winter months. But with no alphabet, with no knowledge, with no human remains, it's impossible to say what was going on here. But regardless, the point is that around 9,500 BC onwards, humanity, we've got records of humanity forming a relationship with the stars and understanding the need for temples and sacred monuments, which have continued to this day. Come back to where I was, looking at Orion the other night, looking at Orion's belt. Now, a few decades ago, there's lots of fuss around Egyptologists about how the stars in Orion's belt are, and the pyramids, the Great Pyramid at Giza, the three pyramids at Giza, they're in a perfect position to relate to the stars of Orion. And that is factual. And there is a case here of the Egyptians trying to replicate heaven down onto earth. But it's also the case with the Thornborough Henges in North Yorkshire. The three large circles of Thornborough Henge are very much a replication of the stars of Orion's belt. There's also a replication here of Orion's belt in Orkney with the Ring of Brodgar, Stroness, excuse my pronunciation to those Orcadians. And the reason I'm talking about this is because yesterday I was out at a wonderful little village in the middle of Bodmin Moor called Minions. Seriously, you can't make it up. And I went out to the cheese ring, and on the way there I went by the Hurlers stone circles, which are still existent. And these are dated to about 2,500 to 3,000 BC. The end of the Mesolithic, the start of the Bronze Age. And they also are in a position of an almost straight line with the smallest circle at a slight angle, again representative of Orion's belt. So it seems that Orion's belt is represented in a number of different places around the planet. And this is all I know. There may be many more, for all I know, as yet, probably yet to be discovered. So why did ancient humanity pay so much attention to Orion's belt? Especially when, if modern historians are to be believed, their prime preoccupation was hunting, sheltering and procreation. They didn't have time for anything else. Yet they went to fantastically detailed lengths to commemorate exactly these positions of stars on huge megalithic monuments on the surface of the planet. So this either suggests that they were absolutely certain that this was of vital importance to be passed down to their ancestors, to their descendants, i.e. us, And it also suggests that their level of technology, accuracy in measuring celestial phenomena was far more advanced than we currently, or modern historians currently, believe it as being. There is a trend amongst the pseudo-historians to suggest, there's a lot of New Age stuff around how, yes, human bodies are the origin, they come from Neolithic times, from Neanderthal man and Homo habilis and Homo sapiens. But where does intelligence come from? Our capacity for rational, objective, detached, impersonal thought, our ability to laugh at ourselves, our ability to recognize ourselves in mirrors. No other species has ever had this. And there are large schools of thought that suggest that this is from elsewhere. And with the connection of Orion's belt superimposed on our landscape in so many different ways, it does give me food for thought. Now, I don't do aliens or ETs or anything like that. I do different levels of consciousness, different dimensions of interaction. But it's food for thought. Where are our origins? Why are we so different to anything that's ever happened on planet before? And what does that mean for our future as we escalate and accelerate into an imminent future, potentially of massive, once in 50,000 years of revelation? This next few years is going to reveal some very interesting answers, and I can't wait. Catch you later, world. Bye.